What's up, everybody? It's the 4th and Goal broadcast with David. Sunday night spectacular. Happy Easter. Glad to be back. How you doing tonight, David?
I'm good. Happy Easter to everybody out there. We got a pretty good show for everybody tonight. Going to start off a little bit with Aaron Rodgers and whether or not he'll get traded before the draft or after the draft is started. Still no news on Lamar Jackson, but hey, he's got himself a new weapon if he decides to play for Baltimore. And then we're going to spotlight a few teams in the NFL, mostly in the AFC, and we've got some big guns we're going to talk about tonight, including the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills. So let's begin with our long national nightmare. No news from Aaron Rodgers. The word on the street is that, Green Bay's playing hardball. They want a first-round draft pick, even though they claim in the public that they don't. And so it's thought that the Jets are going to force their hand. They're going to go ahead. We're going to get into the draft, and they're going to let the first round of the draft just play out. And that way they don't have to give up their first-round draft pick. If they want to trade, Aaron Rodgers to the New York Jets, they're not going to get a first-round pick this year. They'll wait till the second day of the draft and send them a second-rounder. Or maybe they'll just wait till the draft's completely over with and really force Green Bay into a corner, because I'm sure Green Bay wants those picks this year. They want to be able to upgrade their team now and not wait till next year. Because if Aaron Rodgers does play for the Jets, Chris, they're going to be a much better team than if they didn't have him at their quarterback position.
I have to agree. I know the GM for the Jets, he said he's for sure guarantee seeing Aaron Rodgers over there. So they must be having a little bit more talks than they're actually speaking and letting out of the bag for him to be that confident. But at this point, I think you have no choice. You got your whole fan base sitting there thinking that you're getting Aaron Rodgers. So, it would be pretty crazy to see Aaron Rodgers not get traded after all this. I think the Jets are trying to play hardball, and not give up that first round. But at the end of the day, I think they ended up making whatever deal that Green Bay wants them. Because I feel like right now they're not going to – right now, if this don't go through, they're going to face a lot of backlash from their fans and all that. You spent – how long has it been now? Going on 3 months? About 2 months that these talks have been going on.
It's time seems to stand still, really. To be honest, it's only been about 5 weeks, since the start of free agency and everything. They've done a few things that Aaron Rodgers wanted. They've signed Alan Lazard. They brought in, some other weapons like Mecole Hardman. Now, he wasn't necessarily on the list that was publicated or to everybody. He wanted Odell Beckham Jr., and I guess that's the segue into Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, once again, there's a deal on the table for him to sign. He can either sign the franchise tag and play out this year for $31 million, or he can sign a 3-year guaranteed contract for $133 million. Well, he'll make $43 million a season to play for Baltimore. But they signed Odell Beckham Jr., so he's got another weapon there in Baltimore if he decides to play for the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens have not done a lot of business, and we talked about this, I don't remember if it was last week or the week before. They've only signed a few players. They haven't had much business going on at all because they don't know how much money they're going to have to allocate from the salary cap to bring Lamar Jackson back to continue to play for the Baltimore Ravens. They've offered him a deal. No one else has offered him a deal, despite the fact he has the non-exclusive franchise tag. There's been rumblings that the Colts might be a little interested, but nothing's come of that. You know, we thought before all of this stuff went down that, you know, it could be one of the NFC teams. Washington looks like they've got their own plans. They're not interested in bringing somebody in that's going to hurt their salary cap situation. Atlanta's in the same boat. They pick high enough that they think that they can come up with another quarterback if they're not happy with Ritter. And they've named him basically the starter going into this season, with Heineke being the backup. And so, you know, Lamar Jackson's basically stuck between a rock and a hard place. I'm starting to hear that it's possible that he sits out. I think that's a bad move on his part. It just keeps getting worse and worse in the media for Lamar Jackson. He gets this weapon to come in. They've added some pieces, very limited. They've lost a few people on defense, but, you know, they haven't added a whole lot of pieces to the team. They were a playoff team last year. They need to get a deal done with Lamar Jackson, Chris.
They need to, but I hate to say it, Lamar Jackson's being very, very ignorant at this point. That's just how I'm calling it at this point, is ignorance. Because he's out there, I understand. You know, I understand you've played your ass off. You've done some good things for your team, your franchise, and you feel like you're getting underpaid for what you've done. I get the aspect where he's coming from, but at the same time, you have to look in the mirror and look at everybody's stats openly if you're trying to pull this. If you're trying to pull a Mahomes deal and you ain't even putting up Mahomes numbers and passing, not even tenth of it. The only thing he has is that run game, which I will say, that run game is amazing. But as history's shown with him, it only works until he gets hurt. And then he's hurt. I'm not saying he can't be a good quarterback. I'm not saying he can't change his play and become a better pocket passer and run when he has to, because that's very capable of happening. But the problem is he's not realizing that. He's trying to sell himself like he's Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and a quarterback that's won Super Bowls. All you got to really, you know, all he really has to stand on is one MVP. And mind you, yes, an MVP is a big award to win for any NFL player, but it's just an MVP. It really don't say much. How much MVPs has there came and gone throughout the league, but at the end of their career, that's the only thing they had there to be able to stand on is I won an MVP. There's been a lot of, you know, there's been a lot of players come in this league, win the MVP, and that's the highest they get. And they don't get the championships and all this. And he's over here saying, you know, I've been thinking about the Super Bowl since 2018. Oh, when I watch your play, you don't show me you have, because you keep putting yourself in a position to get yourself hurt. Now you're sitting here asking your team to give you basically their salary cap. And then you're going to cry because you have no weapons. So here's the question. Do you want weapons, Lamar, or you just want all the money? Because you ain't thinking about championships. Come on now. Let's just be upfront, Lamar, because you're not looking at championships when you're asking for all the money. A smart quarterback would be like, hey, sign me for a 3-year deal. Make sure that 3-year deal pays you a good amount of money, but you still leave money out there to try to go win you a championship. That's what a smart quarterback would do. I mean, Tom Brady's did it for years. He always made sure he got paid, but he always made sure his team could still play other players so he could win those championships. There's a difference.
I think that's a little unfair because he was married to a supermodel. He's got a lot of endorsements. and he won championships before he started signing the bigger contracts. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. If you go back and look,
he had a lot going for him. And so, for Lamar, for one thing, Tom Brady had an agent. Okay. I mean, that's the main thing for me, is that Lamar Jackson needs an agent. Okay. It's worth it because when you have an agent, the agent seeks out endorsement deals to make money with. An agent can help make up for all of the stuff that you think you're giving away monetarily, from having an agent, having to pay him. You have so many things that he can provide, the PR that comes with having an agent, the communication, the endorsements, the, making sure that all of the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, that there are incentive-laden stuff in the contract. He's not a lawyer, he's a football player. Okay.
I understand what you're saying.
He can pay somebody to look over the contract and make sure that he's not getting screwed, but you gotta have somebody there to provide sound financial advice to a person, a pro athlete of his caliber. He's got a contract on the table. I just don't understand why he doesn't sign that contract. I mean, there are other avenues that he can take to get what he wants. And I don't think that he is reaching out and he is negotiating in good faith with Baltimore. It just feels like this is what I want, and I'm not gonna change anything. There's no negotiation. It's an ultimatum on his end.
Yeah. No, I agree with you a little bit. Brady, you made a point. Brady had a super amount of wife, but is that really a point when he had no problem divorcing her? You know what I'm saying? Here's my thing too with it. It was even when Brady was married to his, wife, and she was a supermodel, had more money than him. Okay, you could use that argument, but this is where I'm going to mention this part. Did Brady really think like that, or was Brady thinking big outside of the box? If he took less money and won a bunch of Super Bowls like he did, he was going to make more money off the field than actually on the field. Because think about it, look at all the endorsements, all the commercials, everything that got thrown his way because he was winning as much Super Bowls as he was. He made more money off endorsement deals than probably many people in the league did for over 20 years. So that's my thing. There's other ways to make amount of money that you want to make. And I totally agree with you. What the contract, if I'm not mistaken, the contract on the table for Lamar is 3 years, 133 million guaranteed. Am I correct?
And it's guaranteed. Be $43 million a year.
So if I'm Lamar, I'm signing the damn contract. That's $133 million guaranteed. It's 3 years. Guess what? Now you left money on the table, Lamar. It gives them 3 years to give you a team to go win the Super Bowl. Now, if you don't win the Super Bowl in those 3 years and you're still in the same spot, then you move on to a different team that's willing to pay you another $133 million, if not more, after these next 3 years. And then you go from there. You still got $133 million in the bank.
Well, and also he'll be young enough, if he bets on himself, he stays healthy, he's young enough to sign another big contract. It'll be worth even more because all of these contracts are going through the roof. You're getting lots of, they're gaining every year. The salary cap is going up, and so at the quarterback position, you get paid a premium dollar amount. In 3 years, he can re-sign another contract if he stays healthy and proves that he can remain healthy and be a winner, if he bets on himself, this 3-year contract is a good contract to have. He's trying to get a even longer term deal. He wants like a Patrick Mahomes 10-year contract and $50 million a season. If that's what he's looking for, he's not getting that from anybody.
See, here's my thing. As a player, now I just want to throw this out. Lamar said on his Twitter that he's been thinking about a Super Bowl since 2018. I'm going back to it. Now just think of this. Why would you lock yourself? Why? I want to ask him, why does he want to lock down for 10 years in this big ass contract? If you're worried about wanting to win a Super Bowl, don't you think it's smarter to take the 3-year deal than a 10-year deal? What if you take the Ravens' money? What if the Ravens never get you to a Super Bowl, bro? Now you're stuck there for 10 years. Yeah, you got paid, but is that all you're worried about? Like, are you going to be able to retire with no Super Bowl?
Listen, as a fan of football, we have different priorities. This is how they make their living. Okay,
I understand that.
They provide free PR, okay, by saying that winning is important and they want to be a winner and they want to do this and they want to do that. When it all comes down to it, the bottom line is the majority of these guys, it's all about the money. Okay. Now,
I guess that's what makes me
smarter
different.
guys in the league know that they can create a lasting legacy if they not only make a lot of money, but are also a winner. Okay.
See, that's the guy I want to be.
Too. Okay. And they have to decide in their mind that that's what they want to do. Because when a player leaves money on the table, it makes their union mad. It makes their fellow position guys upset for years and years. Okay. Tom Brady, the public praises him because he doesn't take enough money. He could take so much more, but he's a winner. And the same thing is happening now. Okay. All of the players are mad because he didn't get the top dollar that because if he gets a big amount, it drives the price up so they can get a big amount. The exact same thing is happening right now. Patrick Mahomes is like the 4th highest paid quarterback in the league now. Okay. Everybody, it's pretty much across the board. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. He's coming off of an MVP season, an MVP of the Super Bowl. They just won their 2nd Super Bowl. He's underpaid. We got to get him more money because they want him to take more money so that the team isn't as good as it was. Okay. They want the team to get worse so that they can beat them. They want him to collect more money, and that'll drive the prices up for everybody else's contracts. That makes the union happy. And so the union isn't happy right now because Patrick Mahomes, we're talking about Lamar Jackson. Patrick Mahomes, you can't pay Lamar Jackson more than Patrick Mahomes. No. You can't pay Lamar Jackson more than Aaron Rodgers. You can't pay Lamar Jackson more than Josh Allen. And so if their totals were higher, then that drives his price up higher. Well, I'll still just be the 3rd best, highest paid player, making $47 million a year. I can live with that.
See, I understand that, but and granted, we're both fans. We both have a passion for the league. That's why, obviously we got our broadcast show. So I understand what you're saying is players do that, but see, to me, I just think players just didn't think outside the box. Because, what I see is $133 million. I look at how much businesses could I start, hire people to know how to run them successfully. And I can make all that money plus some off the field. I'm not locking myself down to a franchise that can't get me to a Super Bowl. I'm leaving my options because I want to be a winner. That's just me as if I was an NFL player. At the end of the day, you make enough money to invest your money to make enough money off the field. If you don't hire the right help to do that, and you're worried about money, and you're okay with retiring with nothing and not leaving legacy, I mean, I don't see why you're beating yourself up. Shit. If that's the case, pay me $1 million right now. I'll play one season, let you beat the shit out of me, and I'll retire and go invest my $1 million and live the rest of my life with ease.
Right.
You know what I mean? Let's
when I look at
here.
it, when I look at it, it goes kind of like this. Okay. You got Baltimore is I would say a very good run organization. Okay. They've won a couple of Super Bowls. They consistently have a really good defense. Their coaching has been excellent over the years. And so it is counterintuitive for them to give up the kind of money that Lamar Jackson is looking for. They can find another quarterback. Okay. And they know that. Okay. Now they're doing the best they can, I think, to try and get him to stay, to get him to prove himself over the next few years. You know, they haven't won in the playoffs. You know, he's got that MVP trophy. That MVP trophy is worth nothing without playoff wins and Super Bowl success, like you said earlier. Okay. And so he wants to be recognized as one of the highest paid players in the league. That's important to him, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. Exactly. That has generally been the consensus up until this year, that the top 10 paid quarterbacks in the NFL, they don't win. They don't win the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes was the first one to do it, and it happened this year. And it's because they have an organization with good scouting, good development, good coaching. You know, they had a great draft this last year. Baltimore has great drafts, but you can't.
Baltimore's a great franchise.
You cannot count on them to have magnificent drafts and let players walk out the door that deserve to be paid a certain amount of money just so you can keep one guy. And that's, you know, that's kind of like the Chiefs. Okay. The Chiefs had to trade Tyreek Hill because they know the money's coming up for Patrick Mahomes. They had to let Mecole Hardman go. They had to let one of their defensive tackles go. They refused to sign Orlando Brown Jr. for the kind of money he wanted, you know, because they're trying to stay under the salary cap, maintain their ability to win, kick the can down the road a little bit more. They restructured Mahomes' contract. They restructured a couple more contracts. Couldn't keep Frank Clark. And they've talked to Chris Jones and basically, you know, appeased him that, you know, they're going to give him a better deal, but it's going to have to wait till next season because everybody won the Super Bowl, so now everybody wants to get paid.
Exactly.
And you can't pay everybody and be a winner. You can't keep everybody.
And here's my thing: if Lamar should call Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers said this on the Adam McGuffin. How do you say his last name?
Who?
Aaron Rodgers. What's the punters? What's that show Aaron Rodgers always goes on?
It's a Pat McAfee show.
Yeah, Pat McAfee. I always want to call him the different name, but Pat McAfee show. Rodgers was on it, and you know, Lamar should call him. Because he said it perfectly. He said, "I would have been out of Green Bay about 2 years ago if it wasn't for back-to-back MVPs." So look at Lamar. Look at Rodgers. He won back-to-back MVPs and has way more MVPs than you have, and it only bought him 2 years, and he has a Super Bowl to his resume.
Right.
It only bought him 2 years, Lamar. And the third year, guess what? This is Rodgers' probably worst year ever in Green Bay as a starter, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I would say this was his worst year as a starting quarterback in Green Bay. Because
You
he
also,
didn't.
you also have to realize that Green Bay's under a lot of pressure because they drafted Jordan Love.
Oh, I know that. That's all
They
I'm
don't want to.
saying.
They don't want to go into a season where they don't know who their quarterback's going to be. They're going to have to exercise a fifth-year option after this upcoming season, but they got to take a look at him this year to find out if he's going to be worth the first-round draft pick that they gave up for him.
Oh, for
And
sure.
so that's the reason that Green Bay is under the gun. They drafted this guy to replace Aaron Rodgers, and they haven't had a fair chance to look at him enough to see if he can do it. They're a little bit spoiled in Green Bay. They went from Favre straight into Rodgers. There was one season there where they were kind of shaky, but they've been pretty much consistent with success, except for the last year that McCarthy was there, and this last year there, with Rodgers at quarterback.
And that's all I'm bringing up is it only bought him 2 years, and now it's the end of the road. It's either retirement or he goes to the Jets or somewhere else. There's no more playing in Green Bay. And that's all I'm trying to say is this court, Rodgers has a way better, legacy that he's going to leave behind than Lamar. And it's like you're trying to sell yourself on what you've done, and the only thing you've got is one MVP. So if Aaron Rodgers can't sell himself to Green Bay to make them move on from Love to keep his starting job in Green Bay, what makes you think you're going to maneuver a team to pay that kind of money? Because you're not.
And I agree with you, but every organization is different.
Oh yeah, let's be honest.
At this point, I feel like we're beating a dead horse when we talk about Lamar, but it's important here. The big news, of course, is that Odell Beckham Jr. got signed with the Baltimore Ravens today. The contract could be worth, with incentives, up to $18 million a year. The fine print is that he's getting about $6 million, and he's going to have to, get 1,000 yards receiving and get so many catches and so many touchdowns. And, they got to make the playoffs and, all this other stuff in order for him to get that $18 million. He's only getting about $6 million. I think I didn't see how much the guarantee was, but I think it's $6 million guaranteed with the chance to make up to $18 million with all the incentives. But he's going to need Lamar Jackson or any quarterback to come in there and get him the football if he thinks he's going to make any of that money.
Speaking of that, I want to share something. Just since we brought up Aaron Rodgers, before we move on to the next topic, real quick.
Okay.
I did this. Fun little draft or little poll on 4th and Goal. So I did this fun little poll 2 days ago with Aaron Rodgers expected to go to the Jets. What do you think the Jets get out of Aaron Rodgers? First option was Aaron Rodgers and Jets win Super Bowl. 6% like that. Rodgers takes Jets to the playoffs, got 34%. And Rodgers and the Jets still don't make playoffs, 60% out of 208 votes total.
Well, I got to be honest. I picked that the Jets make the playoffs, and I think that with the the losses by the Buffalo Bills, who is a team we're going to talk about tonight, some of the losses that they have on their team, and the easier schedule that the Jets have, I think the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, and this is before the draft and before the the scheduling, the timing of the schedule comes out, I think the Jets have a real shot at winning that division with Aaron Rodgers in place.
Oh, yeah.
Green Bay knows that, and that's why they're playing hardball trying to get a first-round draft pick.
The crazy thing is, I'm actually really surprised that Rodgers and Jets don't make the playoffs got 60% of the votes.
Yeah,
That blew
Well,
my mind because
you,
I
you,
don't expect them to win the Super Bowl. I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible for them to do because they do got a great defense over there. But I do expect them to at least make the wild card at the lowest point. I don't think they completely miss the playoffs unless Aaron Rodgers comes out and completely plays horrible. I
and
mean,
you got to remember that some of these polls, when you put them up, there's going to be a section of people that are going to vote for him to not make the playoffs because, one, they don't like the Jets. Two, they don't like Aaron Rodgers. Three, their teams in that division, they don't want to see them do nothing. They hope they lose, you know. And so some of those votes are just, out of spite of the whole situation and everything that's happened. So I think if you are a reasonable person, you saw the defense that the Jets had last year. You've seen some of these offensive weapons that they're bringing in. If they get Aaron Rodgers with the schedule they've got, I don't think there's any way the Jets do not make the playoffs unless they have some sort of major injuries, especially to Aaron.
exactly. I don't see him. I don't see him slipping down that far where they don't make the playoffs for any reason. Ron did reply. He got to comment with his injuries. He'd be only smart by taking 133 million with running it.
Absolutely. Take
I
that
think
money and run.
And then he said he thinks the Odell Beckham is 1375 mil guaranteed.
I would be surprised if it was that high, but I'll take your word for it for now. I think that at this point we should move on. I want to start talking about some of the heavy hitting teams in the AFC. Now, this first one, might draw you back a little bit, but basically, this team had the number one seed just 2 years ago, and it feels like they've started to fall apart. And that is the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, and this does it to me every time. I knew it. I didn't lose everything, so just give me a second here. Let me find this again.
Gotta love technology.
Yep. We have a problem with this damn thing about every week when I try to share something. All right, let me go back to here. Let me share.
The rumors have really quieted down about the Henry trade, though.
Oh, about Derrick Henry being traded? I know. I haven't heard anything right now about anything when it comes to that. And so I think that's good, for Tennessee if they're able to keep him, because when you look at the list of players that they have lost, I mean, there's some big names on this list. You've got Robert Woods, he went to the Houston Texans. Austin Hooper is gone. They had Taylor Lewan, Terrell Basham and DeMarcus Walker. Linebacker Zach Cunningham, he's their best linebacker. They had to cut Bud Dupree. The one thing that they did do, and it's further down, free agents or re-signings or whatever right there, is that they are able to re-sign Jeffrey Simmons. Now, Jeffrey Simmons is he's a top 3 defensive tackle in football. If you still consider, Aaron Donald, number 1, you go to Chris Jones at 2. Jeffrey Simmons has got to be number 3 at defensive tackle. So they keep the heart of the defense on the line right there. But all of these other players that they had to let go, there's been talk that, they're ready to move on from, Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. They drafted Willis, whose first name eludes me suddenly, this last year, and he did not look good at all.
Speaking of Willis,
yeah,
I just read an article that supposedly in the front office of Tennessee are regretting on taking him and they're supposedly scouting all quarterbacks in this year's draft really heavy because they're saying that they think they've drafted a bust, and it don't sound like too many people up above in that front office is sold on Willis right now. And I mean, this is one of the reasons when he was linked to Detroit, I was glad we did not take him. I kind of seen it coming, but I wonder how true the article is. It was pure sources, so it's nothing, it wasn't a big source name. So I don't know how much truth is to it, but this will be one team I will really pay attention to in the first round of that draft on the first day.
Absolutely. And I mean, Tennessee, you got to think about Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee. If he if he falls far enough down, I'm not sure if a lot of teams consider him a first round draft pick. But if you get Hendon Hooker to fall to you, Tennessee can pick him up. That'd be one heck of a pickup. And then they can let him sit while he's still recovering from that injury in college. Run with Ryan Tannehill one more season and bring Hendon Hooker along and learn the system. I always call it the a la Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes, plan where you got the rookie who sits behind the quarterback, for a year while he learns everything. But you definitely don't want to throw him in there right away, especially with all of the things that have happened to their offensive line. I mean, look at that.
I'm surprised
they lost their left tackle, their guard, their center. I mean, the offensive line is going to be a sieve this year in Tennessee, depending on who else they can manage to bring in and pick up this year in either free agency draft or players that they do draft.
It's kind of sad to see Taylor Lemaine out. He's one of my boys from Michigan I follow. Starting out with this broadcast, I do watch his broadcast with Bustle with the Boys. They're trying to pick up things I should do better. I do enjoy he does got a great show with Will Compton. But it's kind of sad to see him a free agent, see him still as a free agent. I'm kind of hoping he makes a comeback somewhere, but when you tear 2 ACLs in your knee back-to-back seasons, I believe it was, it's hard to get trusted. I'm assuming that's why Tennessee made the decision to cut him. I was kind of hoping to see maybe if they restructured his deal, he would stay. Because I know that's a big loss because he is a great left tackle when he's healthy, and he's that dog that you want on your team. One of my favorite highlight is that game. Tennessee won it in OT, and he was standing on the field going to the refs, screaming at the refs, "You try to give up the game. You try to screw us out of the game." I like the passion he brings. I think that's a huge loss. And, their offensive guard, Nate Davis, the Ben Jones. I mean, they lost a lot of people on this team. I do not see Tennessee being a top dog in the AFC this year. I believe they could be one of the worst teams in the AFC, how it's looking, unless Henry can do it one more time. If he still has enough in the tank to carry this team all season, then it's a possibility. But I mean, I think at this point, you're asking this guy for way too much work. I mean, I like Henry as a running back, but I hate to say this. Last year did not go that good for him at the end, with it being injured. I'm hoping he can make a bounce back this year. But at the same time, I feel like this could be the road of another Todd Gurley situation where you just running back so hard by the time he gets in these years, he's not as good. He's already done. You know what I mean? I felt like that happened with Todd Gurley in the Rams, towards the end of his career in LA. They, the first couple of years, they ran the dog shit out of him. And, the last couple of years, when they made it the Super Bowl, he wasn't there to help them win it. And that was one of the reasons why they lost that Super Bowl. I feel like Henry could be in that same situation for how much Tennessee's ran him. We've seen it with McCaffrey. Be honest, I thought McCaffrey was done until we seen him with the 49ers this year. But again, that was McCaffrey split in handoffs, and he only touched the ball so many times a game. Could McCaffrey touch the ball like he did in Carolina anymore? Could he go through a season and do those numbers? So that's where I think Tennessee really needs to figure out going into this season, because I mean, if you're not trusting your starting quarterback right now, the only person they have trust on the whole offense side of the ball is Henry.
And then we're talking about trading him, which is why, it's like they're rebuilding the team at this point. I liked what some of the things they've done in free agency. They got themselves a couple of pass rushers at D end and linebacker. I think they strengthened their secondary with Sean Murphy Bunting. But once again, I'm really concerned about the offensive line. They're going to have themselves a rough schedule. Ron's making a lot of comments. Thanks for following along, Ron. He said he still thinks it's Jacksonville's division. They're the team to beat, and I agree with that.
Same here. We talked about it.
He also said it was Malik Willis that I was trying to think of, and that I don't think that they need to trade up. Unless they're looking for somebody else, I don't think they need to trade up with Arizona to get a quarterback. There aren't that many quarterback needy teams right now. They're still trying to figure out if they have a quarterback on the roster, or they've got a young guy and he just hasn't come along quite yet. So I think that they have a real chance of getting Hendon Hooker to fall to them. I don't think they need to do any trading up in order to be able to get them.
Well, they might have a little trouble there because Hendon Hooker is scheduled to meet with the Lions, I believe, Monday or Thursday, one of the two.
But just because he's visiting a team doesn't mean that he's going to get drafted there.
No, I know. Obviously, Tennessee would have first shots, depending on which round they choose to take them, because I don't think Detroit would take them until probably 4th or 5th round, or maybe even try to get him lower if he's still on the board, because he's another kid that's 25 already.
Right.
If Tennessee's don't trust Willis, I would say go with Hooker. He got extra college experience, extra playing. He might, if something happens with Tannehill, he might be able to jump in there for you and make some moves for you. He is very smart on throwing the ball with his ball control. I will give him that. I mean, I wouldn't say you're going to make the playoffs with Hooker, but he might be at a point where he could play better than Willis in this league coming out, just because he had those extra years as a college quarterback. And I think X years playing in any competitive league before you come into the pro league.
It's a positive.
It's a positive. The only thing that hurts him is his age as a true starter. And I know we've talked about this a few weeks back, that him and Stennett, for them to be a starter in this league, they would need something for like this to happen, to go their way. A team that,
how about Stetson Bennett?
Yeah, Stetson Bennett and Hooker, both 25, both coming in the league, one of the oldest quarterbacks to get drafted, I believe.
Lots of experience.
But we both talked about maybe Bennett going to Baltimore if Lamar don't really play. And Hooker, but we both made it, known that both of these quarterbacks, for them to be a starter, would need a team like a Tennessee team that's not sold on their starter, definitely not sold on their backup, but might give them a shot, and they might be in the position where they can get in the real game and win a starting gig. That's what those guys want in this draft. That's what they need to try to be successful. Because I think if they go to a team that has a starting quarterback that they trust, they're just going to be a backup quarterback probably for the career. Which, guess what, guys? It sucks. It might suck not being a starter, but you still get paid decent.
You get paid pretty good. The Chase Daniels and the Taysom Hills of the world, believe me, are rolling in that money.
And here's the best part. if you're not Taysom Hill having to play a different position each week, most of those backup quarterbacks get to sit nice and pretty on the bench, and they ain't getting their ass kicked week in and week out, and they're making good money to look pretty. So, I mean, it's not all bad to be a backup quarterback in the league.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, we got a bunch of people following along here and watching, and I want to kind of be interactive with those of you that are keeping an eye on what we're talking about. Say hi, tell us who your favorite team is. Let us know who's watching. We're going to move on to our next team here, and we're going to stay in the AFC South team that made the playoffs. Ron mentioned it earlier. They're probably the team in the AFC South, the team to beat, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They won the division last year. They beat Tennessee the last day of the season, and they've made some moves, not a whole lot. Okay, but they've made some moves. They franchise tagged their tight end Evan Ingram, and he has yet to sign that. But and they did lose some players, most notably for me. Marvin Jones went to the Lions, so you got your boy Marvin Jones back, Chris.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, Jawad Taylor, I believe, has joined the Kansas City Chiefs. He's going to move from right tackle to left tackle. And Shaquille Griffin, one of the twin brothers, I don't think this is the one that was missing the hand. I think he's the one that had both his hands. But they lost those guys. And Corey Peters retired here just recently from their roster. They re-signed several players that I was interested in. I like Trey Herndon at corner for them. Jermichael Hasty's a good backup. The reason that they traded James Robinson away to the Jets this last year is because they had Jermichael Hasty backing up Travis Etienne. And so, they're a good 1-2 punch. C.J. Beathard's a good backup quarterback. Of course, I believe he's the grandson of the Hall of Fame GM, Bobby Beathard. And but the big thing here, highlighted in yellow, is the big weapon that they've added, which they added last year, but he got reinstated, and that is Calvin Ridley, former wide receiver of the Atlanta Falcons, Chris. I think between him and, some of the other players that they have on that team, especially Christian Kirk, that's really going to open up the offensive passing game for Jacksonville this year.
I'm expecting big things out of Jacksonville this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the top 5 in the AFC this year. I think with Ridley and what they accomplished last year, the confidence that
Doug Peterson, good coaching of Trevor Lawrence.
Exactly, Trevor Lawrence. Sorry, I had a brain fart there for a minute. I knew who the quarterback was. But I think with the confidence Lawrence is going to come back with after last year, I think this year is going to be the year that they put themselves on the map. I don't even think as a division winner in the first round, and they could. I'm not sure they'll get the first round bye, but it's a possible thing. I like Trevor Lawrence last year. One of the things I enjoyed about him is he was very humbled. I do like the fact of him getting Calvin Ridley. I follow Kevin Ridley on Snapchat, and people who think, he just was suspended. Let me tell you, watching that dude suspended on Snapchat for a year, all last season, all that dude did was at the gym every day on his story. I think he's gonna come in with a chip on his shoulder, and I think he's gonna light the scoreboard up in the first couple of weeks.
I agree. I think that they're going to be a really good, high-powered offense. Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence this will be their second full offseason together. They're going to work on that passing game. They're going to, see some things that they possibly missed this last year. every team does self-scouting. And Peterson comes from that Andy Reid tree. I'm sure he's not too happy that he lost his right tackle to Andy Reid and the Chiefs. So they're going to have an axe to grind when they play against them again this upcoming year. Of course, the Jags lost to the Chiefs in the divisional playoff round here this last year. And so, but they played a tight game. They played good. I thought all year last year, they were up like 14-0 on Philadelphia early in the season. Of course, the Eagles managed to come back and they beat them up in a monsoon. But they played tough, went all the way to the West Coast and beat up on the Chargers. And then the Chargers had that big lead in the playoffs in Jacksonville. And the Jags managed to come back and beat them, which was surprising. I mean, from the big lead that they had, when you get a big lead like that on somebody, you got to put your foot on their neck. They did not run the football like they should have. They just kept passing the ball with Herbert. The defense couldn't make any stops in the second half. And Jacksonville, just the feeling of the fans, having a playoff game, all of the momentum and the vibes were good vibes for Jacksonville coming back and beating the Chargers in the first round of the playoffs last year.
Yeah. This year I'm excited. Jacksonville's a team. I give them props because I thought they would have moved out of Jacksonville a few years ago. Because I know their market there is really iffy, especially you got Miami and Tampa, and they're a team they're another team like the Lions that spent most of a lot of years of being crappy, and now you're starting to see some of these teams like the Lions, and it's just not the Lions coming out. You got Jacksonville right there with us, becoming a real franchise, and I want to see if they can get a real strong fan base now since they're producing something down there. Because I've read a few reports that the city of Chicago's mad that the Bears are moving out of downtown, and there's been some reports that Chicago was interested in trying to get another team to maybe come in to Soldier Field, and Jacksonville is one of the number one teams popped up on that list because their owner has real strong ties to the city of Chicago. I wouldn't want to see them move. So I think this is a perfect opportunity and the right time for this team to get really hot and to build some loyal fans from here and out, and down there in Jacksonville. Because when you're the lowest team on the totem pole and you have other NFL teams in the state, that makes it hard for franchises like this to actually survive in those cities. That's why I give it props to the owner that he's made it this far in Jacksonville. And now I believe they're in a position where they can build a loyal fan base and actually start winning some things down there and stop being the punching bag in that division.
Well, they've got themselves one of the top 5 quarterbacks, one of the young guns of the AFC there with Trevor Lawrence. Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, has made a commitment to the Jacksonville, area. And, despite the fact that they play basically a home game every year in London, that was because they weren't drawing big crowds because they have been a losing franchise over the last, dozen years or so. Every once in a while, they show a spark. They made it to the AFC Championship game and had the lead on the Patriots, and then it just fell apart on them that one year. When Blake Bortles was the quarterback, they made a mistake bringing in Urban Meyer, but at least they drafted well when they had Urban Meyer. They got Trevor Lawrence. They got Travis Etienne. They made some sensible moves here and there. And now, having the good coaching with Doug Peterson there, I think that, this team is on the rise. They're in a weak division. And so they've got an opportunity here because of the weak division to rattle off some division championships a couple years in a row. They're going to be in the thick of the playoffs. Now, I know that Houston feels like they're coming back up. They bottomed out so that they could build a win. And, we just talked about Tennessee. It feels like they're in the middle of a rebuild. The team that worries me the most in the AFC South that can challenge Jacksonville is the Indianapolis Colts. But they got to get the quarterback right. The reason I feel like the Colts have a chance this year is because under the new coaching of former Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen, he's the new head coach in Indianapolis. He brings in Gardner Minshew, who is a serviceable quarterback. If they can get that defense playing well again and they can run Jonathan Taylor downhill behind a good offensive line, I think the Colts, they'll get in that 10 win range, kind of like Jacksonville, and the two teams will battle it out this season for that AFC South division.
I mean, it's very possible. I'm not really, you have more hope in Gardner Minshew than I do. But I'm not saying you're totally off because I know he played for the Eagles last year, and then you follow the Eagles offensive coordinator over to his new team. So that gives you advantage because you know his system. So, granted, Minshew knows the system right off the bat. You don't really have to learn the playbook because he already knows the playbook. So that transition might actually play out to be pretty good. And the Colts do have one of the better defenses when healthy and coached right. So they could be the underdog in that division that shows up at the end of the season. But I also feel at the end of the day, Minshew is serviceable. But you got to remember when serviceable quarterbacks tend to get the starting spots, sometimes they could be, a Nick Foles. But sometimes that Nick Foles story only happens one scenario and no one ever repeats it. And I feel like that's the case that the Colts in. So I think they obviously going to be way better than they were in the last couple of years, for sure. But I'm not 100% sure. I wouldn't say they're going to be there at the end of the year to actually battle for the playoffs. But it's a very good possibility of happening. I'll give them that. I just got to see the product on the field before I can give a fair shot on that. Just because, we've seen the Blake Bortles. Don't get me wrong. I love Blake Bortles as a person. I think he's funny and he's pretty smart financially in a weird way. If you watch him on some broadcasts and the things he tried to do, I think, I watched him on his broadcast, a little short story about Blake Bortles. It was only funny because he chews tobacco, right? And they asked him, so they're like, you're one of the first players, to get a Tesla when Tesla first came out. And he's like, yeah. And they're like, well, what was the reason made you to go get a Tesla when they first came out? He goes, honestly, I was trying to quit dipping. So he's like, I thought in my head, if I buy an electric car, I wouldn't have to go to the gas station no more. So it would just make it easier to quit dipping because now I don't got to go to the gas station and walk right past the dip containers. He goes, no, it didn't.
If you don't buy it, you can't use it.
So just hearing the funny story, like this is why he really bought a Tesla, was just to try to quit dipping. And then the priceless, he still ends up driving to the gas station to buy a dip anyway, is even funnier aspect. So, but granted, I hate to say it about him, but he was basically a draft bust as a starter anyway. A serviceable backup, he was all right and finished his career out as. But, he still holds Jacksonville's best season. Because, they were this close on eliminating Tom Brady the last Super Bowl year. I believe it was the year right before he won his last one in New England.
Yeah, it
And
was close.
he almost went to the Super Bowl that year with Jacksonville. So I mean, you can never take that away from that guy. But that's just what I'm meaning is serviceable QBs. You've seen them get close. You've only seen one of them actually pull it off.
Yeah.
And that was the crazy thing, you know. And I'm happy for Nick Foles that he did it. You know, especially when he told the story after winning the Super Bowl, how he was at a camping with his brother-in-law, just him, and he told his brother-in-law, like, I think I'm just going to hang it up. And then the Eagles called him, I think, on this trip.
No, Andy Reid called him. Andy Reid called him. He brought him to Kansas City. He backed up there for a year, and then he re-signed with the Eagles the year after that.
No, it was the year after he left KC, he said. He was camping with his brother-in-law, and it was just them. And he told his brother-in-law that he thinks he's going to retire because he was still a free agent. And then it was like right after that trip, the Eagles called him, and it was like, "Do you want to come back?" And he was like, and his brother-in-law, I think the Eagles called him maybe right before the trip, and that's when he was with his brother-in-law. Now thinking about it, and he was telling his brother-in-law, like, I think I'm just going to retire. I'm not going to sign that contract and just call it quits. But then after talking with his brother-in-law after the trip, he signed that contract, and then he won the Super Bowl that year for the Eagles. So, I mean, if you think about it, that was a once-in-a-lifetime story ending for him. I mean, look, it got him to stay in the league, you know.
Well, you talk about Foles and you talk about Bortles, but putting a bow on the Jacksonville Jaguars, you know, this was only Trevor Lawrence's second year. So they can ride him out for the next couple of years on that rookie contract before they have to start, you know, talking about an extension. They can bring in some more playmakers. They've got an opportunity to be right in the thick of things in this AFC playoff hunt. And so I think they got the right coach now. I think Lawrence is a good enough quarterback. And I think between the two of them, we're going to see big things out of Jacksonville going forward.
Oh, for sure. I think, like I said, I think Jacksonville is one of the hottest teams coming in this season.
And the team that they beat in the first round of the playoffs was the Los Angeles Chargers. And the Chargers have themselves a problem. And that problem is that it feels like they're cheap. The spark plug of the team is Austin Eckler. He wants a raise. He is an underpaid running back. He was an undrafted free agent, and he has been their mainstay workhorse the last couple of years at running back. They don't want to work out a deal with him, so he has requested a trade. And when it comes to the business that the Chargers have conducted thus far this offseason, they have signed no free agents from any other team. They've only re-signed their own players, and they have lost some pretty good players, including their leading tackler, linebacker Drew Tranquill, went to the Kansas City Chiefs. They lost, you know, Nasir Adderley decided to retire. He's one of their starting safeties, you know, along with the other dude who I just can't remember all of a sudden. You know, but they lost their kick returner who was, you know, wide receiver DeAndre Carter, who's also their kick returner. He is the kind of guy who came in and filled in admirably when Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were injured, you know, during the season. Between him and Joshua Palmer, they filled out really well. Now, there was some, you know, speculation or rumors that Keenan Allen was going to be released, but it turns out that the general manager quashed those, quashed that speculation during the combine. I found a video because I thought sure he had been released, and it turns out that he has not. and they said that, Keenan Allen is going to be a Charger for life. They're not going to let him go anywhere.
I don't blame him. I mean, because this year he was banged up, but look what happened when he came back. He's able to play in this league. I mean, you got to get him help. That's for sure. I mean, he is getting older, but he's still a great receiver for any team to have. And if he was a free agent, I don't think he would last as a free agent for long. He's always been that dog. I know you're big in fantasy football, like a lot of us are. And I know I've always had success with him on my team when he's healthy. I think he's a key part of that offense. And, our good buddy Josh just dropped down and said the biggest addition to this team is Keelan Moore as OC. And I think he's absolutely right. I think Keelan Moore was a great OC in Dallas. I think he could have even been the better OC in Dallas if Mike McCarthy would have gave him full reins. Well, that's why I think it's one of the reasons why he left him with the LA, because Mike McCarthy had too much over on him to not let him have free reins, and they butted heads too much. That's why I'm assuming that they chose to go separate ways. I think this could be the best Chargers season you've seen so far out of the new quarterback and that team. Because I mean, let's be real. That team should have made the playoffs, should have made a run last year, and for some reason, when they got there, they just kind of sank in the mud real fast. I think, but the biggest problem I think this team still has on their table right now is Austin Eckler requesting a trade.
Well, they've got not CJ Spiller, but Isaiah Spiller, who they drafted last year. I don't know, if they're going to work out a deal or not. It seems like Eckler's a little bitter about things at this point because he's requested a trade. There's a few teams out there that I think that he could go to, but, it depends on what it's going to cost these other teams, because not only are they going to have to pay Eckler, they're going to have to trade, some sort of draft capital, in order to get him. And Josh says, of course, that the Chargers are a flawed team and they're going nowhere. It feels that way year after year. They go night-night. Everything seems to be going along. They have so much talent on their offense and on their defense, and they just go to sleep, which is a big joke on Pardon the Interruption by Mike Wilbon. He talks about that all the time, and sometimes they want to blame it on the coaching. They want to blame it on the play calling. I blame the players. The players have had good coaching over the years. I've liked a lot of the coaches that they brought in there. I like the go for it on fourth down style that you get with Brandon Staley at head coach, but he's supposed to be a defensive guru, and the defense has been a sieve from time to time. Now, Bosa gets hurt occasionally, but they brought in Khalil Mack last year, and I really thought it's Derwin James as the other safety, by the way, now that I'm getting into the Chargers here. I really thought with the secondary they had that could hold up, the pass rush could get there, that they would really challenge in the AFC West. And, of course, they made the playoffs. So, they were in second place. But to just lay down and lay an egg in the second half against Jacksonville, I know they went across the country, to play that game in Jacksonville, but I really thought they should have put up a better fight. They're already talking about having to spend money to re-up, Justin Herbert. And if he's not on that rookie contract anymore, some of these higher paid players, the Bosas, the Max, the Jameses of the world, they're going to have to leave. So they're going to have to rely on their scouting department and their draft in order to bring in better players because they can't afford free agents.
Totally understand. I mean, but this has been the Chargers' identity for years.
Yep, Josh even said that.
With Rivers, LT, all the great players they had back in the day, this team should have won a Super Bowl by now.
They were on the cusp of it. I really think one of the biggest mistakes that Dean Spanos, the owner of the Chargers, has made in the last 20 plus years is he fired Marty Schottenheimer. You know, they had a 14-2 record. LT was, I don't remember if he won the MVP of the league, but he led the league in touchdowns.
I think that
he's a dual threat,
MVP.
and the ball just bounced crazy against the New England Patriots. They had the game won and would have been to the AFC Championship game, and it just fell apart.
Yeah. Oh, this is one thing I'm kind of glad I don't live in California, or none of my favorite teams are in California too. Because I believe when teams are like in LA or close to LA, even San Diego in those years, I feel like in those kind of cities that there's a lot of more distractions for these players when they're not on the field. And I feel like that could play effect. I mean, now look at them. They play in LA. You know, most of these players have connections to Hollywood, to other celebrities. I don't follow too much Hollywood celebrities, but guess what? When I did, I knew they always said there was like celebrity parties every night. So is that one of this team's problem off the field? Are there players, spending too much time with their friends at these celebrity parties and not focusing like they should be week in and week out for these games? Who knows? It's a possibility. I know there's way more distractions playing in LA off the field than it is for like a person on the Lions. I mean, don't get me wrong. City of Detroit, there's plenty of opportunities to go party and hang out with boys from the team, and go to the clubs. But there's way more distractions in places like LA than the average city, because you got way more going on out that way. So I mean, there could be a number of reasons why this team has problems. I don't understand it because, like I said, back in the day when I was young, they should have won. With LT and Rivers at a time, they should have been easily able to win 2 Super Bowls. They never did it. They always found a way to choke in the playoffs. And right now, even though they built this team, they got another team that I feel like it's almost right. It's not far from the level they've had with Rodgers and LT. They could get back to that level, but can this team actually get over the hump and actually make it all the way and has a successful season? I think this year is a huge year for the Chargers. I hate if they don't do nothing this year and the same thing plays out again. The GM of the Chargers might have to really face the question and try to figure out what's the next move.
Josh asks, what do we think of Justin Herbert? And I personally think he's a good quarterback. I think he proved right away that he was going to be somebody to deal with from the very first start that he had. He didn't have any idea he was going to be playing. And, Tyrod Taylor ends up with a punctured lung thanks to an assistant medical guy or whatever. And the next thing you know, Herbert's in there throwing for 300 yards and nearly beat the Chiefs. They caught him on a field goal right at the end of the game. The Chiefs won in his first game by a field goal. And but I think he's a tough SOB. I think that he's a gunslinger, and I think that he's a good player. And I don't believe that it is his fault that they lose these games. I think it's a lack of defense I think that the offensive line has been a sieve from time to time. Now, they've tried to work on it. The last couple of years, they brought some guys in. They got, Corey Lindsley, the center from the Green Bay Packers. They drafted a dude out of Northwestern, whose name eludes me right now, but they picked up some good players to try and make that offensive line better, but they don't run the ball nearly enough. While Austin Eckler is the focal point of their offense, a lot of the damage he does is by receiving the ball out of the backfield. Yes, he runs the football good when he gets some touches, but they don't run nearly enough. That's one of the flaws I think that they have in this team, and I think that that'll be something that Kellen Moore will fix, because he's coming from Dallas, a team that run the football predominantly. Now, they did do a lot of passing with Dak.
Excuse me. Here's the thing. Here's my opinion. I think
Excuse me again.
I think Kellen Moore could be a top 5, top 10 quarterback easy in this league, year in, year out. So I feel like the Chargers' biggest thing is that they really, as a team, they really need to get the shit figured out, because you're going to have to pay him to keep him long term. I think you could take their quarterback right now, Justin Herbert. I think you can move him to a different team with players around, and he succeed. I think you could take Herbert, for instance. You could take Herbert out of San Diego and you could put him with the Cardinals, and he would take the Cardinals to the playoffs with ease, and they would be able to even make a run. That's how much I like Herbert. I think Herbert has all the tools to be a successful QB. So for me, is the Chargers' biggest thing right now as a franchise, you better get the shit figured out before you got to pay that guy money, if you want success. And I think Kellen Moore could be that answer. Like you said, I think he's going to run the ball, but here's the thing that might fuck the Kellen Moore save the team from saving him, is if this trade goes through with Eckler. Yes, they have another running back, and I'm not saying that kid can't carry the load. I'm not saying that kid cannot be a good running back, because we haven't seen him in that position with the team. But what I want to say is, what if he can't do it all by himself? Now you're in a pickle. It don't matter if Kellen Moore's your OC at this point. That could hurt your backfield by him not being there. So I think the biggest thing for them is to really try to work this shit out with him before they lose him too. Because I think with Kellen Moore, you need him to be there. And as long as he stays and plays the whole season, I think maybe they could give Chiefs more run for their money this year. Because they're going to have no choice, because I think Denver's is going to be way better than they were last year. So that's another question that's another thing why you got to figure this out. Because, last year, all they had to really worry about in your division was you guys. Denver wasn't around to do anything last year. Same with Vegas. They showed glimpses, had a small chance at the end of the year, fizzed out real fast. But that's all they tasted. Other than that, the Chargers only had to worry about the Chiefs. This year, I hate to break it to you, they got to worry about the Broncos. They could even have to worry about the Vegas if Josh McDaniels shocks the world. I don't have faith in McDaniels as a head coach, even though we got.
Yeah, no, I don't have that. I don't have any faith in Vegas. I think Denver will be much improved, and I expect that, Eckler, they may try to trade him. It'll be one of those, happens during the draft situation, because their Chargers are probably going to draft another running back.
Oh,
I just think that would be in their best interest, is to draft another running back rather than, give in to Eckler's demands. Because once again, this is going to be his, technically it would be a second contract extension, because he was an undrafted free agent. So he signed with the team, then they gave him a bigger deal. This will be his third contract. And, I don't think that people are going to want to pay the kind of money that he wants, because running backs are not the focus of the league anymore. It's the quarterbacks that are. While they still run the football, a lot of teams nowadays go with a 2 or 3-headed attack so that they rotate them in and out and they keep them fresher, because running backs tend to get hurt so easy.
And I think too, I think this is a lot like a Lamar situation with him as well. Because like you said, the most damage he does is when he's catching the ball in the backfield or at the goal line. So you could relate this to the Lamar situation. You could even rate this to, I hate to say it, Jamal Williams. Another back that has had success, obviously with Detroit this year, led the league in touchdowns. But if you look at all Jamal's touchdowns, they were at the 1-2 yard line. A lot of the same thing with Eckler. So again, it falls in the same category. They're both trying to sell themselves as a Nick Chubb. All these workhorse running backs that are still left in the league. But in reality, you're a workhorse, but your biggest success at running the ball is at the 1-2 yard line, my guy. You know what I mean? You can find a good back that's big and strong and hand them the ball at the 1 2 yard line, and good chance they're going to get in the touchdown within 4 plays. They're going to find the end zone. I mean, look at the Bears and Perry. Fridge was a great player just because he was a defensive lineman that came and played fullback. And he scored a lot of touchdowns because of his size. But you're not going to pay Perry $100 million, a $50 million contract to run the ball for you.
Yeah.
Because you're only using them at the 1 2 yard line, or maybe on 4th and inches, or 4th and 1 maybe. He's not fucking getting the ball at the 20 and running an 80-yard touchdown. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to overpay for a player that's only getting used to rush for 1 or 2 yards for a touchdown. Like, granted, they're paying you for pretty good for what you're doing for them. I mean, now, I won't say in Eckler's situation, it's all his fault for that, because like you said, the Chargers lack running the ball. They don't give him many touches as running the ball. So, I mean, obviously, he's not all at blame for that.
Yeah.
But the problem is, that's how his market is set, because that's what he's done. And it kind of sucks. Like, I feel his pain, because I feel like he is a better end running back than he is getting credit to be from his own team. But at the same time, that's how they made your market, my guy. And you kind of just got to take it. I mean, like I said earlier, you're making enough money to invest off the field to make 3 times more amount of money. So to me, at this point in your career, you shouldn't be playing Cry Me a River, because you've had a pretty long career already for running back. And, we see running backs come in and have, good 3-4 solid years. And then they get hurt their 5th or 6th year, and then they're never the same again. And then they fizz out of the league. So.
You're talking about running backs, and that brings us to our next team, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals lost Samaje Perine in free agency to the Denver Broncos. They got Joe Mixon, but he's got legal trouble now because, they had filed some charges against him. They dismissed the charges because there wasn't enough evidence. They got some more evidence, and now they've refiled charges. And he has a history in Oklahoma, when he played in Oklahoma, of domestic violence. This could be a big problem for him going into this season, where Cincinnati's trying to get back to the Super Bowl. They lost last year to the Kansas City Chiefs in a barn burner in the AFC title game. They're causing some problems of their own because they bring in Orlando Brown Jr. to play left tackle, and the guy that was playing left tackle, Jonah Williams, doesn't want to move to right tackle because he wants that left tackle money. And so he has requested a trade to leave Cincinnati. The players that they have lost at Cincinnati are all names people will recognize. They lost their best tight end again for the second year in a row. They lost CJ Uzuma last year to the Jets. This year they lose Hayden Hurst to Carolina. Both their starting safeties have left, and that weakens their secondary. Jesse Bates III was a franchise tag player last year. This year they let him walk because they're worried about having to pay Burrow real soon. They've got Higgins they got to re-sign. They got Jamar Chase they got to re-sign soon. And so they're happy to let some of these other players that are worth big money walk.
Yep.
Vaughn Bell leaves also. So, I mean, they didn't lose a lot of players, but the ones they did, I think were pretty crucial, Chris.
I have to agree, and they're going to have to for sure draft a running back for sure in this draft, because when I say this, don't take my word for it, but I read another article a few weeks back. I don't know if any charges are coming from this or not with Mixon, but there was another report that something happened at Mixon's house, and Mixon came flying out of his house and was shooting a gun up in the air. I don't know how legit that one is. I don't know if that's one of the reasons why maybe he got these refiled charges on him. Maybe could be the same thing, because I know the first time around, supposedly he pulled a gun out on a woman in a road rage incident or some sort of that. So maybe that's why they refiled these charges, because now they got this one on evidence, because if I wasn't mistaken, there was a ring camera photo video of this incident. So I'm not 100% sure, because they haven't released really any details on the charges, but the charge's been refiled. So that just tells me, if this is a whole separate case, this could even mean more charges coming to him. Now, again, he might not go to jail for any of these charges if he does get double charged, whatever, if this second one is even legit. Mind you, I'm just bringing it up because it's what I read, and I seen a video, and it was somebody shooting a gun. It looked like him, but I'm not going to commit to it. But just putting it out there. So, I mean, even if you don't go to jail for any of these things, he's still probably looking at a suspension. So I think if you're Cincinnati, knowing that you got to pay Burrow, knowing Mixon's probably going to want more money too on his next deal, you might just want to draft a rookie running back and call it a day, and get rid of Mixon all around at this point. I mean, they really have to ask themselves, what's their best point? Because, I mean, I know they want to win a Super Bowl before they have to pay Joe. That's the goal in Cincinnati. I still think they have a team that can do it. I think they still have to have a good draft, and this year, to be able to do that and have some rookies be able to come and fill some of these holes. But I still think they have the team, they have the coaching, they have majority of the players to be able to still be one of the top teams in AFC. But they're going to need a running game to do this, and that's raising a lot of red flags, especially when you got a guy getting himself in trouble for some real stupid shit. There's no way to there's no excuse for the actions of Mixon. And right now he's literally being stupid and very ignorant as a person and as a player and as a part of the Cincinnati Bengals organization. So obviously it's pretty clear to me that's a cancer, and the front office should be really sitting there talking on how they're going to take care of the cancer. Because if you don't take care of the cancer, say if you don't get in trouble, say it gets thrown out of court, you want to take a chance on this guy that got off twice, and then he might do something else in the season. God forbid, be in the middle of a playoff run, gets himself in even more trouble. I mean, you really don't want. I mean, I wouldn't risk my franchise on it. So I could see. I'm another team I will watch for the draft, and I would see if they're going to go first round running back.
I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of teams that are going first round running back, because but I'll tell you this, when it comes to players having a job with a franchise, they always have that balance of, talent to trouble. Does it weigh out? Is it too much trouble for the talent that's there? Mixon is a really good running back. He's been a 1,000-yard rusher for them a couple of times. He's already under contract, so they don't have to worry about doing any signs or trades or, anything crazy like that. I guess it just depends on what happens in the court of law. But, they've got Travion Williams was the third running back on the team. They re-signed him. Yes, they may draft him another running back at some point in this draft. Ron says, don't forget Ezekiel Elliott's out there. Ezekiel Elliott is overweight, overpaid, and he better be working out very intensely this offseason. He's going to be the kind of player that they bring in during training camp for a tryout. They're going to want to see him live, not necessarily Cincinnati, because Zeke thinks he's going to be worth a lot of money. That's just the way his ego goes. And so, he tried to use his agent through the media to force his way onto a team that is a winning franchise. He's like, oh, yeah, the teams I'm interested in playing for are Philadelphia. They don't want him. Cincinnati probably can't afford him because Cincinnati is notoriously a cheap franchise. Okay. They don't have the kind of facilities. They don't have the kind of backing and the things that other franchises do. The general manager, for God's sake, is the owner, just like Jerry Jones, in Dallas. But at least in Dallas, Jerry's got a bunch of people helping him decide what they're doing. Whereas Mike Brown, just has family members there helping him out.
Now you spoke on, I just want to tell like a short story, like short scenario. Now you said you got to balance the talent to the off the field problems, right? I'm just, and I hate to bring this up because to me, and it don't go with football, but here Ron probably knows what I'm talking about. For like the Red Wings, we had a player called Bob Probert, one of the baddest players to ever play in the league. This dude could score goals and beat your ass, and was probably the best fighter that the NHL's ever seen. But he got drafted to Detroit to protect Steve Eisenman. Now, mind you, he ended up having trouble with cocaine and drinking. He got DUIs. He got caught at the Canadian border going home because he's just from Windsor. So anybody knows Detroit, the bridge is right in Detroit. As soon as you cross the bridge or the tunnel, you're in Windsor. So Bob Probert had that short of a drive to his hometown from Detroit. And that's where he actually lived. And he would come across the bridge or come across the lake on his boat, whatever. But he got caught coming back in Detroit with a bunch of kilos of cocaine, got suspended. Detroit saved his ass year in, out, every time, David. He got in so trouble one time when he got busted with the cocaine that he couldn't even go back to Canada at that time. He could not go back home. So when the Red Wings went and played in Canada, he couldn't even play in Canada. He had to stay here in Detroit because they wouldn't let him over the border because of his actions and all that. Well, at the end of the day, guess what happened? Right before we won the Stanley Cup, he relapsed, got another DUI, and the Wings said, you know what? We're done. It's it. We're done. We let him go. And yes, you know, the Chicago Blackhawks picked him up. They sent him to a rehab. They signed him for actually a big deal. And but you know, they made him lose his first year of money because they made him sit in the West Coast in a rehab center. And you know what happened? The guy never won a cup. The Red Wings went on to win 4 Stanley Cups. He didn't get no Stanley Cups. And then he phased out of hockey because of all the off-ice actions. So at the end of the day, yeah, the talent might be there. Be worth to deal with it maybe once or twice, but if it keeps happening, you're just hurting yourself by holding on to a guy. And it sucks to see that. Because you see it all the time, like Pac-Man Jones.
Yeah, every league has this type of thing happen where you've got guys that have been in trouble, they get released, they supposedly get reformed, they end up with another team, and they show out, and because their talent is high, they're willing to take on the possible problems.
Yep.
Kareem Hunt in Kansas City goes to Cleveland. That's a prime example. Terrell Owens, more trouble than he's worth on the field. Let go by the 49ers, let go by the Eagles, let go by the Cowboys, let go by Buffalo. Finally ended up in Cincinnati, you know? And so you just have these players that their off the field issues cannot outweigh their talent, or they'll be let go. But if you've got a talented player, and I feel like Mixon's a pretty talented player, once again, he's under contract, so they don't have to do anything special. They just, you know, oh, well, you know, we'll talk to him and we'll send him to counseling and he'll do community service and, you know, whatever else. The talent right now is outweighing the trouble, but it may not be that way always.
Exactly.
But back to their running game, I think they'll probably draft somebody. I don't believe Ezekiel Elliott will end up with Cincinnati.
Unless he takes,
you know, they replaced Hayden Hurst here with my buddy Herb Smith Jr. from Minnesota, who I never felt like was an elite tight end there. You know, he was easily replaced when TJ Hawkinson came over from Detroit. You know, they've tried to bolster their offensive line again here by bringing in Brown and Cody Ford. I like the pass rush with Terrell Basham. You know, Sidney Jones is a serviceable corner, but he got burned quite a few times when he was in Vegas and before that with Philadelphia. And so, you know, I don't think that Cincinnati is an improving team. I think they're just holding serve at this point. It's going to depend on what they do in the draft about whether or not this team is still capable of making it to the Super Bowl. I like the team overall. I think they're definitely a playoff team, probably can still win the division, but you've got Pittsburgh coming up. You know, you're going to have Deshaun Watson in Cleveland is going to get a full off season and he gets to play right out of the gate. And you got, you know, Baltimore, if they get Lamar back, if Lamar comes back, now they've got Odell Beckham Jr., him and Andrews to throw the ball to. The defense is stiff. Going to be a very interesting season in this division. You know, we just got to wait and see what happens with the draft to determine if this team is going to take a step forward or not.
Exactly. I mean, we got to see how things play out. I mean, but my opinion is still strong on Mixon. If this is really going on, and cut your ties before it hurts your team. Because that's the last thing you got. That's the last thing the Bengals need is to have cancer and problems in that locker room. Because then, who knows what happens? More players might want out the following year, you know, and then you could go to off couple of years. You know, I feel like the Bengals, this has been the best they have best teams they've had in a lot of the franchises. I think the next good teams you can go back to is 06 with Cinco, TJ Mazzata, and Palmer before Palmer gets his knee blown out in that playoff game.
Yeah.
Other than that, that was the best years I've ever seen the Bengals. And I paid attention a lot to the Bengals that year because I'm not afraid to
I'm
say
older than you. I remember when Esiason was there and they played against Montana and the 49ers.
Cinco has always been my favorite NFL receiver for a lot of reasons. I always loved him for the celebrations and him not giving a fuck about what the NFL said about it. I also love him as a player, and I believe, and I just want to call this out. The NFL should hire Cinco for all rookies, financial advisor. Just saying. I don't care what anybody says. Cinco is one of the smartest NFL players to ever play the game, money-wise. Have you ever heard the story about him? He was on a broadcast, and they asked him.
Very, very thrifty with his money.
Really thrifty. Did you know this, David? Did you know Cinco lived in the Cincinnati Bengals stadium for 2 years, a full 2 years, his rookie and his first year in the league? He lived in the locker room. He slept on the couches. He didn't leave the stadium. He slept there for free. And they asked him on the broadcast, what would make you do that? He's like, think about it. He said, coming to NFL, I had to learn my speed of the game. I had to learn all my techniques. He goes, so what was the best way to do that? Not leave the stadium. I'm always there watching game film, practicing, working out, all this stuff. And he goes, about it. He goes, why would I need to go waste my money on a house? He goes, the stadium had everything. If I wanted to play video games, they had video games. If I wanted to take a shower, they had showers. They had couches, beds. They had everything. Food. He said, no, the only thing I couldn't do is like have a girl come to the locker room. I wasn't allowed to have no one in it. But he's like, I lived there for 2 years. That helped him get the game speed down and allowed him to be a great receiver in the league. And then the third year, Marvin Lewis came to him in his third year in training camp and said, okay, Cinco, you're okay, Chad. You've been here too long. It's time for you to let your wings out and leave the nest. You've been here for too long. It's time for you to get the F out of here. So you know what the man did? Instead of going buying a mansion like he deserved for his hard work, he went and lived in the city, right down the street from the stadium. He said there's a 1-bedroom flat, and he rented that for the rest of the time he was playing for Cincinnati Bengals. A 1-bedroom flat. Here's all these players being flashy, buying all this stuff. Here's Cinco living in a 1-bedroom flat, and I believe a lot of the problems with the high turnover rate with these rookies. I think all rookies should have a financial advisor. I'm just being 100%. I think a lot of these young kids need that coming into the league. I know they do get it if they ask for it, but I think
they have the rookie symposium where they have a lot of players that have been troubled in the past tell their stories to these young players, warn them about the girls, warn them about their money, warn them about following the rules and how it works to be a professional, how it works to be an adult, because a lot of these guys, they either lived in the dorm at college or they lived at home with their mama, And so now this is going to be their first experience of going out in the world, and they got all this damn money, and they're this close to doing something dumb that's going to cost them all that money. And so that's why the NFL puts that on. I admire Cinco for doing those things, Chad Johnson, but I think that I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of people to follow his example when it comes to what he did.
I'm not saying they have to do exactly what he had to do. But I just feel like Cinco, I know he had that one domestic violence. that happened in Miami, which got him suspended. And then at that point, they kind of didn't show him too much. Now he's back in the
his career was pretty
limelight.
much over at that point.
And now he's back in the limelight a little bit with NFL on this show, and they're bringing him on a little bit more. But I would like to see him get that offered a position to maybe, be a counselor for these young guys. I think he's a great example. I mean, because his total, what he said at the total of his career, of all of his game checks, he said like 92% of all money he made playing football, he still has in the bank to this day. And now to this day, he got some money coming in off the field from investments and so I just feel like, he could be that. He could play a big role in helping these rookies out. But
we got one more team to talk about tonight. And, we're going through some of the big dogs here, a lot of the playoff teams in the AFC. And so I wanted to talk about the Buffalo Bills and, what they have done here this offseason. You look at the players they've lost, and there's some pretty good players on this list. Case Keenum has been a decent backup. He's been a starter at a couple different places in Cleveland and in Minnesota. And now I think he's going to go to Houston so that he can be the starter and, prepare the understudy, whoever that's going to be in Houston. It could be Bryce Young, that's who I think it's going to be, because I think C.J. Stroud is going number 1 to Carolina. But, they also picked up Devin Singletary, the running back here. And so that means that in Buffalo, you're going to see a lot of James Cook, who they drafted last year. That's Dalvin Cook's brother. He's going to end up being the lead runner for Buffalo. They were running a lot of 3 and 4 receiver sets over the last couple of years in Buffalo. Isaiah McKenzie, he scored the 4 touchdowns against the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, that was Gabe Davis. This Isaiah McKenzie has scored some touchdowns, and played, very well from the 3rd receiver spot. He was kind of the guy that was coming in and replacing Cole Beasley, over the last couple of years. And now he walks and goes to the Colts. Jamison Crowder was there for only a year from Washington. They lose the second guy at tight end and Tommy Sweeney. But the big losses are on defense. Tremaine Edmonds and Jaquan Johnson are both gone. Edmonds goes to Chicago. And, I don't know where Jaquan Johnson went. I forget. They re-signed Matt Milano, so that's a big move in the middle there for their linebacking core. They keep their punter. They kept Jordan Poyer. That's a big move there.
That was huge for him.
Yeah.
Because
there was a lot of talk. He was leaving.
Well, because he said on his social media that he would love to go to another state because he said he loves Buffalo, but he wanted to go to a different state that wouldn't take half of his damn money. That was out of his exactly mouth. He said that on his social media. So when he said that, I thought for sure Jordan Poyer was completely gone out of their team. So to me, for them to actually re-sign him and keep him in Buffalo, that was huge for Buffalo. Because he came out and said it, he wanted to go to a different state. So he didn't have to give up half his money. So I think that was really big for Buffalo. They don't lose all their safeties. They keep Poyer. Obviously, they believe a lot in DeMar Hamlin. I mean, he did play a strong campaign, unfortunately, that night. So, I mean, I still think you got a pretty good safety duo with as long as Hamilton can come back full strength from what happened to him and stay healthy with Jordan, and Jordan Poyer can stay healthy. I still think they'll be okay on us in the safety wise. Linebacker, though, that's still a huge lose. They're either hopefully the next man up, Metaldi, can replace that. or maybe they draft a linebacker that can replace Emlins. But they've lost some key players. There's no doubt about it. I still think they're one of the better teams, though. But how are they going to be just as good, or are they going to take a backseat?
I didn't think that they were as consistent an offense down the stretch as they had been earlier in the season. They come out of the gate and killed the Rams on the opening Thursday night. And they were the favorite last year, because of the 13 seconds with Kansas City and all that other stuff. They're going to have a chip on their shoulder. They're going to come out and they're going to beat people up. And when they stopped the Rams opening night, the whole league went, oh shit, here we go. Here they come. But it's such a long season now, 17 weeks, really 18 when you count the byes, that between injuries, the thing that happened with, Damar Hamlin, you've got, some coaching defections. Now you got some of their better players that have left. Now they added Damian Harris, from the New England Patriots. That's a nice find there. I think he's a steady running back. They don't run the ball nearly enough as they should there in Buffalo. They're pass happy because of Josh Allen. And, and it didn't change. They went from Brian Daboll, an offensive coordinator, to Ken Dorsey, and it was still throwing the ball all over the yard and not running the ball nearly enough. Now, their offensive line, they added Connor McGovern from the Cowboys. So that'll be helpful on their offensive line. They re-signed Ike Bachner, and David Quessenberry. So they've got some depth on the line. I just think that Deontay Hardy is not a replacement for Isaiah McKenzie or Jamison Crowder. And, they're going to need to make some waves in the draft to help improve their team because everybody is still looking up at the Kansas City Chiefs. Buffalo and Cincinnati, both these teams, they've got their eye on the prize. They're in the tougher conference. They've got other teams that are on their way up, especially if Rodgers comes to the Jets. Buffalo's going to have a fight in their division between them and Miami. I don't expect New England to put up that much of a fight, but I still think they'll have a winning record. Could be the best division in the AFC East. I just think that when you look at the Buffalo Bills, I think that 2 years ago, that was their year. If they could have made it to the Super Bowl, I think they'd have beat the Rams. But Kansas City just stood in their way. They've been knocked out of the playoffs twice by the Chiefs. Now they've been knocked out at home by Cincinnati. And so, it feels like Buffalo has taken a step backwards, and now they've taken a step backwards this offseason.
Yeah. This kind of sucks because, being a Lions fan, I've always rooted for those franchises that, were a lot like us, and Buffalo for a lot of years was just like the Detroit Lions. When they became good with Josh Allen, I was like, okay, this is the first team from the group of these teams to take the step and really change their franchises around. Because, before the last couple of years, what did Buffalo really have to talk about? The 4 Super Bowls with John Kelly that they lost? Other than that, Buffalo hasn't really done nothing. They were the first team out of the Lions group of teams that have been known to be bad franchises that change stuff around. I think they're one of the reasons why you're starting to see the Lions do what they did, completely dismantle the whole front office and rebuild it to change the culture. You've seen it in Jacksonville. You've seen it happen real fast when, what's his name, Meyer, went down there as the head coach, turned it very toxic real fast. The owner didn't play around, got rid of Urban Meyer real fast. And honestly, I think saved his franchise from going back down a dark road.
Well, listen, they've got a good front office. Sean McDermott comes from the Andy Reid coaching tree, although on the defensive side of the ball. And so, they've had a lot of consistency. I wouldn't exactly say that the head coach will be on the hot seat if they don't take a step forward this year, but it could happen. It could happen because you get these owners, and Terry Pagula is the owner of the Buffalo Bills, that they become impatient. They signed the stadium deal. They're going to have a brand new stadium here in a few years, possibly a domed one there in Buffalo. And
I think that's stupid.
They made a commitment to stay in Buffalo. And but you get, like I said, you get impatient owners. They've been on the cusp of doing great things. Yes, they've won some divisions, but they expect to win Super Bowls, and they haven't done that yet over the last few years. They've had other teams standing in their way.
I think Buffalo's one of those teams where they got to really sit down and mark their team down and figure out exactly what they need to do to get that done. That's the position they're in. I still think they make the playoffs this year. I don't think they missed the playoffs, but are they going to be able to keep up with the Chiefs, the Jets, Miami? There's going to be a lot of questions going into this season because their division will not be as easy as it was last year. Because last year, the only team they really had to worry about for a division was Miami, and then the Tua shit happened. So now, I don't think anybody in the league.
The Jets, it's going to be tougher. And they're in a loaded conference. We've talked about the AFC being the loaded conference. You look at each of the division winners from last year. Jacksonville has gotten better. Kansas City still got to figure that out. We don't know yet. You got Cincinnati maybe took a step back, but you got Cleveland and Pittsburgh on the come up. Baltimore could definitely be better if they get Lamar in. You got Buffalo won the division last year. They're looking at the Jets and Miami, that were in the playoffs. The Chargers were in the playoffs. Denver's on the come up with Sean Payton. You just can't overlook any of the teams in the AFC, with the exception of a couple of the teams in the AFC South. It's going to be a fight to get into the playoffs this next year. And I still expect Buffalo to make the playoffs, but I think that they're going to get challenged for that division. And could be a situation where they don't get a home game. Now, we've seen a couple of teams over the last, a decade plus that have been a wild card road team that ended up winning the Super Bowl. But I'm not sure Buffalo's one of those teams that could go on the road and do that.
I don't think so. It all depends on where they're at. We got to see it in action. We know what it looks like on paper, and both of us agree they took a step back when it comes to the paper right now. But, that's what the paper says. Sometimes the paper is not always right. You gotta wait till we see these teams in action, because who knows? Maybe Buffalo has players on the roster that we haven't got informed yet. That's a possibility. But as of right now, it's not looking too hot, for them. Because I know I'm glad they kept Diggs, because I was hearing a lot of rumors that Diggs was going to be a piece moved from their offense. And so far, I haven't heard no rumors, and it seems like Diggs has made it clear he's okay with Buffalo. I know his brother was tweeting at him saying, come to Dallas. So,
they didn't have the money for him.
Probably not, but you know what I mean? If his brother's shooting shots on Twitter, that's how you knew there was legitimate discussion about him possibly being on the move this offseason. So, I mean, to me, that's a big step to still see him in the Buffalo Bills uniform, because I think if you take Diggs away from that team, you really hurt that offense.
Yeah.
Because they definitely need to get a running. They need for them, I think, to be a deadlier team. I would like to see him draft a good running back this year in the draft. I believe Allen is a great QB. He can run. I know Sean, he don't want him to run. He's made that clear. He wants Allen to stop running the ball as much. But here's the thing: if you don't got a running back that can actually control a running game and the running pace in a game week in and week out, and to me, I have not seen that out of a Buffalo running back for the last couple of years. To me, if you don't get that running game figured out and get it where Allen don't have to run the ball, you're not going to accomplish what you want out of Allen. Allen's going to run the ball because he's not going to have to. So I would like to see him in this draft try to upgrade that running game. Give more insurance to Allen. And then who knows, if they do that right, the offense comes out, can stay strong throughout the year, they might be all right, David. Because a good running game can fix a lot of issues in your passing game.
Yep.
Because with Diggs still there and the other wide receivers still on their team, I still believe in Allen, the quarterback. I don't see Allen having trouble finding players to throw the ball to. So if they go in there with another mediocre run game where they got to count on the pass for majority of the games, that's when it's going to hurt them.
And with the losses on defense, if you're running the football, you're giving your defense more time to rest. They might need more rest because they're not as good as they've been in the past. You control the clock, you run the football, you put up some points, the defense comes on the field fresher.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what, buddy, happy Easter, man.
Happy Easter to you, bud. I had a great day, and this broadcast has been great tonight. I've had a lot of fun. I hope everybody that's been watching with us tonight has enjoyed a good Easter show in the evening. I'm glad we did one because I didn't know exactly if we were going to do one Sunday or try to push it out further in the week, but I'm glad we decided to do one. It turned out to be a great show, great audience.
I had no intentions of not doing one. It's become a little tradition here, the Sunday Spectacular with Dave and Chris right here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. Everybody out there, we're still trying to get a hold of people. We're still trying to have you comment and tell us who your favorite team is. We're going to have the mock draft coming up here real soon. We want you to pick the player your team is going to select in the NFL draft, and we'll announce the draft on one of the Sunday Spectacular podcasts before the draft.
Exactly. So please either comment, message me or David. We're in the comments. We'll get back to you. We'll make this easy, guys. We'll do the hard work. We just need you guys to be able to message that day when we're doing it and let us know who you pick.
Yeah, well, we need a Houston Texan fan. We need a Indianapolis Colt fan, an Arizona Cardinal fan, everybody at the top of the draft. Those are the easy spots because you got the entire, amount of people out there with the exception of probably the first two quarterbacks, that you can pick from. You can tell us who you want your team to take. With that pick, we'll announce that you made the pick for your team, who they are, and we'll do it. It'll be fun.
Exactly.
The first 31 picks of the NFL draft. First round mock draft here on the 4th and Goal Sports Podcast.
And another thing, if you're a knowledgeable fan you follow the league and you know your things about your team. I'm looking for people from the AFC, even NFC. If you're in the NFC North, I have no problem having you on the show. It might not be soon, real soon, because I've done a lot of NFC North interviews so far. But I need like AFC West, South, NFC South, AFC South, that nature. I need more fans from every team base. So if you're one of those fans, you know a lot of knowledge about your team in the league, you pay attention, and this might interest you. I'm doing an episode on the 4th&GOAL broadcast. Hit me up in my DMs. Let me know what team you like.
Tuesday and Thursday nights, get an interview about you and your team and your fandom with Chris.
I'm trying to work in, regular fans. I'm also in talks with some bigger fans, a couple super fans. Not saying names, just have to pay attention to see which one and see what happens. But that's the nature, we're trying to make this thing grow and, see how far we can take it. Who knows? Maybe we can get an ex-NFL player, maybe a current one. We don't know how far we can go. But the main thing is right now, I want to give the people who really invest their time, money into following their team, supporting their team, a chance to actually sit down in a broadcast interview and talk to your team. So if you're one of the people that might be interested in that, hit me up in my DMs. Let me know what team, and we can set a date, time, and we'll make it happen. Other than that, I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. Also, for the mock draft, if you just want to do the mock draft, we'll let you know what players are available. We'll make it very easy, simple on your end. We'll take care of the hard stuff. It's not an issue. But if you want to be a part of the mock draft, comment, say I'm in, what team, we'll write you down, we'll hit you back in a message, or just simply message us, and we'll set everything up, and we'll stay in contact, and it'll be very simple. Other than that, I hope everybody had a great Easter Sunday with your families. I hope you enjoyed a great show, because I know I sure did. Other than that, you got anything else, David?
That's it. Have a great Easter, and thanks for joining us.
All right, guys. It's been another great Sunday with me and David on the Sunday Night Spectacular 4th&GOAL broadcast. Again, I cannot thank you guys enough for watching on Easter Sunday. Again, I hope everybody had a great Easter. Happy Easter. God bless you. Thank you guys for showing up tonight. And David, thanks again. I always love our show every week. I look forward to it every Sunday. And guess what? I cannot wait the next Sunday. So guys, there'll be an interview Tuesday or Thursday. I'm not sure which day yet. Still got to find somebody for this week. I'm going to start working on that tonight and tomorrow. Pay attention for the banner. If you haven't liked and followed us this page, please go follow and like the page. Turn the bell on. You get a notification every time we're live doing a show. You're welcome, buddy. I just seen your comment. Follow the page to get all the notifications. I try to keep up on all the stories throughout the week. Keep everybody up to date throughout the week on the post. I do post, I do ask questions and polls for people to vote. And we usually have two for sure broadcasts a week. Obviously, when the season gets here, there'll probably be a little bit more action going on with episodes, obviously. But other than that, thank you guys for everything, and you guys take care. We'll see you this Sunday for sure, and either Tuesday and Thursday. So thanks again. Anyways, guys, have a great night. Happy Easter. We're out of here.
Good night from Kansas.
Out of here from Detroit. Have a good one, David.
See ya.